Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this evening. For those of you who weren't here last week, my name is Gary Paul, Chief Executive of Tauranga City Council. In attendance this evening is Deputy Mayor Kelvin Clout and Councillor Larry Baldock. Councillor Catherine Stewart was due to attend and she may be an apology for lateness. Obviously, when we get to the end of the process in respect of the problem we're here to talk about tonight, there will be a significant role for elected members to play in the solution that we come to. But as the point that we're at now, the elected members are here to listen tonight and to observe this meeting on behalf of their colleagues. They do not intend to take any part in the proceedings tonight, just like they did last week. I have with me Kirsty Downey, the project team leader, and she will be speaking to you in a moment. Members of the media are here, and that speaks to the fact that we want to deal with this issue in a transparent and open way. But the rules that apply to the media are the same as last week. The media is welcome to attend and report, but they will not be able to participate in any questions and answer session, because the purpose of this meeting is for you to ask your questions and get your answers, not for the media. The media's turn will come later. The television cameras, the cameras that we have in the room are not television cameras. They are cameras to broadcast this meeting to Australia and other parts of New Zealand, and that is because we have owners that are not resident in Tauranga who are clearly interested in the proceedings that we're going to talk about tonight. We acknowledge that this is a very stressful and frustrating time for you. And as I said last week, our focus is on working as quickly as we can to providing a solution for the issues that you face. And as I said last week, we are making sure that the project team that is addressing this issue is well resourced and has the capability to get to a solution as quickly as possible. Once again, thank you for coming this evening, and I will now hand over to Kirsty to commence the presentation proper.
Thank you, Gary, and good evening, everyone. As Gary said, we really do appreciate you coming out tonight to meet with us so that we can provide you with an update and overview as to where things are at in respect of this issue. In case I haven't met you, and for those of you who are joining us by video link, I'm Kirsty Downey. I'm the General Manager of the Chief Executives Group here at Tauranga City Council, and I'm the project lead. With me also is Nathan Spear, who is a compliance specialist working at Rice & Co Lawyers based in Auckland. Tonight we're going to be open with you, and like last week, some of what we share with you is going to be difficult for you to hear. We appreciate that for some of you, the owners amongst you, these are your homes that you've worked hard for. And this is something that we have on our minds constantly. We also know that for those of you who are tenants, this development is a great location and a place in which you enjoy living. And again, we put you at the front of our thinking when we are making the decisions that we are making. Tonight we have a short presentation for you. We estimate that this will take about 20 minutes. And then we'll follow that with the opportunity for questions. We have to be out of the council chamber by 8:15 tonight, so we're intending that we will wrap up the meeting by 7:30. We're not going to be able to answer all of your questions tonight, but we're hoping that the information we share provides you with some more clarity. We'll cover what has happened over the past week with regard to inspections and technical assessments that have been undertaken, and we'll update you as to the initial advice that we have from our experts. We're also going to have a conversation about accommodation and ongoing costs, which the Chief Executive will talk to. We're going to provide an overview for you of 3 options that we're currently exploring. And while we cannot go into detail about those tonight, we want to provide you with an insight as to what we're working on. We don't have a definitive time frame for you as to when you can go back into your properties, but we're going to be able to give you some new information on that. And we'll take your questions. Now, over the last week, we've heard some and seen some conversations in the media that some of you think this is only an issue about a lack of a retaining wall. It's not that simple. We wish it was. And we're going to cover that again tonight also. So turning now to provide an update on the structural engineering issues. Last week, invasive testing was done at 4 properties. This was overseen by a structural engineer from BCD, who are working with us as part of our dedicated project team. This involved removing areas of gibboard with the owner's consent so that the engineer could look at the structure behind the walls. 2 properties displayed the same structural issues that were present in the 3 dangerous buildings that we showed you photos of last week, and we've spoken with the owners of these properties. The other 2 properties did not display these same structural issues. With regard to the geotechnical engineering issues, a lot has been happening in this space over the last week. Following last Tuesday night's meeting, we engaged Marianne O'Halloran, a Category 1 registered geotechnical engineer, to peer review the geotechnical assessment that had been undertaken by Mike Trigger of ACOM. And together they carried out a site inspection of the development site last Wednesday. Ground penetrating radar survey commenced last Thursday, and a whole of development survey was commenced last week also. Geotechnics have drilled holes in the ground under the direction of Scantech, who are doing that ground penetrating radar survey. And work is now underway to interpret what those results mean. We're currently awaiting the receipt of the final geotechnical report. A new issue has emerged this week. At the request of the geotechnical engineers, structural engineers were yesterday asked to check the design of the basement concrete block walls at 2 of the properties within the development. One of these is problematic. For one of these buildings, the check showed that the basement wall is not able to support water pressure loads. So what does that mean? The basement walls are designed to withstand the pressure of dry dirt, but because the drainage on site is inadequate, the dirt is wet and that places a heavier load on the walls. The result is that the concrete block walls may crack and the walls may bow. This puts pressure on other parts of the buildings, and because most of these are 2-storey, it could in fact cause the first floor to fail. Yesterday's check of the second building's design of the wall showed that it's able to withstand the pressure. However, the structural engineers need to confirm that what has been built is the same as what has been designed. All but 2 of the buildings in this development site have this type of basement wall, and therefore we need to check that all of these walls are safe. So what does this mean for you? We've got 4 experts: geotechnical engineering, structural engineering. We've also got our building compliance expert from different companies, and they're all telling us that they're finding new issues every day. These issues are geotechnical, they are structural, and they are building compliance related issues. 19 of the 21 homes could be issued with dangerous building notices. And if we are correct, then you will not be able to reoccupy your homes for some time. The issue that we have tonight is that we don't know when you're going to be able to go back into your homes. What we do know is that you won't be able to go back for 2 to 3 weeks whilst we await the receipt of those expert assessments. We're working on options. We're exploring those, and I'm going to talk to those and provide an overview later in this presentation. But now I'm going to hand over to Gary, who's going to talk to issues relating to accommodation and costs.
Thank you. On the 9th of March, we advised you that we would be covering accommodation costs and small daily allowance for reasonable out-of-pocket expenses like breakfast. At the point, we advised you to be prepared to be away from your home for at least a week. It has now been almost 2 weeks. Councils would not usually cover these costs. However, Given the short notice of the evacuation and the urgency, we thought it was fair to cover accommodation, out-of-pocket and incidental costs during the immediate phase. We are receiving a number of questions about the costs of accommodation and security. I can tell you that the costs last week were approximately $65,000 for accommodation and security. This is ratepayer funded. We appreciate that you're in a difficult position, but we also need to be prudent with our costs. We are concerned that some of the claims for reimbursements have not been reasonable. This is not an issue for everyone, and I would like to thank those people who have been conscious of the need to be reasonable with your meals and incidental costs. As we're now moving into the next phase, after tomorrow, we will not cover and meet the costs of food and incidental costs. We will continue to meet your accommodation costs until Thursday, 12 April, which is when we will have completed our expert assessments. At that point, if the buildings are deemed dangerous, you will then need to find your own accommodation. We will work with you on a case-by-case basis and may consider offering an accommodation supplement at a cost to be determined by Council. If you believe you have special circumstances, please make contact as soon as possible and do not leave it until 12 April. By 12 April, we will have a far clearer picture of what has happened. Again, I just want to outline that Council did not and does not have an obligation to have funded the costs that we have, but we wanted to support you, and by 12 April, we would have been financially supporting you for a month. I will now hand you over to Kirsty to talk about the options that we are working through to resolve the issue that we face.
So we are currently exploring 3 possible options, and what I'm going to provide tonight is very much a high-level overview. I'm not going to be able to go into detail, but I will provide a summary of each of the 3 options. The first one being remediation, and this would involve us working with each of you to discuss how your property can be remediated, and if necessary, we would work with you and assist you financially to achieve code compliance for your homes. What that would mean would Council would engage contractors and meet the costs of the remediation work. We would enter into a legal agreement, and a legal instrument would be registered on the certificate of title for your properties. Those costs would then be realised on the resale of your property. The second option is if Council was to undertake its regulatory function only, and that would be us completing the expert assessments and issuing appropriate notices under the Building Act, but providing no further assistance. The third option would involve Council purchasing your properties from you, demolishing the buildings on site, and then on-selling the bare land to a developer. As I said at the beginning, when I started speaking to this slide, this is very much a work in progress. We've said that we want to be as open with you as we can be, and we want to share with you what we're currently working on. We absolutely acknowledge that this is hard-hitting, and it's not what you were expecting to hear from us tonight. We're not able to make any commitments to you today. We don't have any Council direction, but elected members are aware that this information is being shared with you tonight. Elected members will at the end of the day make the final decision as to how we're to proceed, and then we would work with you individually. So what are the next steps? Our expert assessments will be completed by the 12th of April. We will then make a decision as to whether the buildings are dangerous, and at that point, and we would meet with you individually. We suggest that you start considering alternative accommodation possibilities in case it is required from the 12th of April. As Gary mentioned, if you believe you have special circumstances, it is our recommendation that you make contact with us as soon as possible and not wait until the 12th of April. We're going to continue to work on the 3 options that I've provided an overview for. We've got a dedicated team who are working on this. And we're going to continue to share updates with you by email as new information comes to hand. We're going to send an email to all of you tomorrow, just outlining what we've covered off in the meeting tonight, and it will also include a link to the video of the meeting so that you have a record of what we've spoken to and the questions that have been asked. So as I said earlier, we need to be away from the chamber by 7:45, but we do have an opportunity for you to ask questions of us. We've got people who are listening by way of video conference, so I'd ask that you use the microphone. I've got Siobhan at the back of the room with a microphone, and if you can speak one at a time in a way that is respectful to your fellow residents and owners. And if you could please direct your questions through to me, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
One of the things that I just wanted to ask about for the future, a couple of us were just talking about how it would have been really good to have had some information before coming here, because I don't know about the others, but I've got things swimming through my head right now, and it's quite hard to process and ask questions at the same time. So where possible, it would be great to actually get some information, maybe to read and process a bit just before coming. The first thing that comes to mind is in 3 options. I don't know if we can flick back to the 3 options. When I read those options, the second one to me is like kicking me when I feel like I'm down, simply because along this whole process, as people have said, why have we got to this point and nothing, and things were signed off and all of a sudden we're out of our homes. So to see that, it sort of makes me feel like that we don't have backing, that it's, yeah. So I'm hoping it doesn't come to that because of what we've actually gone through. What I was wondering about was at one point when I needed to go back to my place to get some stuff, I was talking to the guy that was scanning the ground, and his work was completed after about a week, and I was hoping to hear some results of that tonight, but it sounds like there's quite a number of weeks to go before there'll be results about that. Is that right?
Would you like me to respond to each of the points you make, Deegan?
Yeah, that'd be good,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay, thank you. So with regard to communication, we have been communicating with you as a group, which includes owners and residents. And it's really important that we provide information to you all in an open way, and that you have the opportunity to seek clarification from us. What we've shared with you tonight is hard-hitting, and we want to be able to do that. We were available to then provide support and respond to questions of clarification, but absolutely acknowledge the point that you make. With regard to the ground penetrating radar survey, so those results have now been fed back, but they have directed the drilling of holes in the ground to better inform those results, so that then that information can be provided to the geotechnical engineer. And so we don't yet have that final report. That information will inform that final report. With regard to the options, we've presented 3. In terms of the process from here, Gary will talk to why we've done that and what obligations we're required to meet.
I can understand the reaction to the third option, regulatory function only, but I have a responsibility to make sure that all options available are presented to councillors for their consideration. And 1, I would not be doing my job if that option was not there, and 2, we would not actually be complying with the law if that option was not there. So that has to be there for the purposes of completeness.
Hey, Kirsty. Hey, quick question. With some of the things that were found in these homes with the jib being pulled down, were some of these things, had they been signed off?
So we've undertaken invasive testing of 4 properties, and they have been lined and cleared. So there have been various inspections undertaken in respect of those homes. The 3 that were deemed to be dangerous, as you know, Andre, they were at framing stage, and so they were not complete. But there had been inspections undertaken at various stages for those also.
Okay. So yeah. So the other questions are some of these homeowners that have obviously have got to through the process of building, you have your inspections and you pass with the building inspector. Now, were the issues that were raised in some of these homes, were they signed off compliant to what the building should be compliant to?
So I've said that a number of inspections have been undertaken in respect of the homes that we have undertaken testing of, and structural assessments have been undertaken.
I think we need to look up the word transparency on Wikipedia or something, because you guys aren't giving any of it. Honestly, none of these people have done anything wrong. And then you're not going to cover a comedy. Talk about, geez, you might as well string me up at the center of the court and hang me and bloody take everything I got, the penny, the shirt off my back. Are you being serious right now? Man, I'm so upset. Who's the one who comforts my wife every night as she sleeps, cries herself to sleep? Huh? It's none of you guys. You all go home and you do whatever. Where are we going to find a place to rent with 4 dogs? Are you crazy? This is ludicrous. You know what? I wish to wake up from the dream, but you know what? It never will. It's like we're at a bloody circus here. We've paid admission and we don't even get to see we see lots of jokers, but that's it. Ridiculous. Man. Talk about blame and everything else. I don't give a crap about blame. Let's fix the problem. Let's fix the problem.
Hey, Kirsty. I'm Hilton Miller. I've spoken to you on the phone. I'm not quite so emotionally involved, only because I don't live in my house. I see these guys met most tonight, and I've spoken to the guys. I'm set aside, and I'm in engineering in Auckland, so I can look at this a wee bit differently than without sounding like an arse there. I am set aside a wee bit. Now, I appreciate, Andre, your situation. I appreciate all your situations. The only cost to me right now is the rent on a house that's 100,000 over. Okay, that's it for me. That's but that is real, and that's only going to climb. Now, you've mentioned reimbursement. You know, that's the only point I had tonight was with the that wall on the basement there. Last time we talked about tanking. Council was a wee bit disingenuous, I think, with the photos. You showed ingress of water, but it was uninhabitable space. I know with my house that the tanking was on. There's a PS3 for it. The guys had come in and explained that which way around it went. Well, that's all the properties I don't know. So you did mention how that's going with those. You mentioned last time there's polystyrene review and the tanking review. But the main thing I would say, and you said tonight, the first thing you said was, in the papers it's been retaining walls. And that's not the big issue. But as I see it right now, that is still the biggest issue because those walls wouldn't be wet, okay? They wouldn't have that pressure on those walls if it was dry. Now I've got the rubber stamp on my building consent for retaining wall to go in. That's been there since June last year, I think. It was supposed to happen in January. You had your own engineers now. I know Mr. Trigger is a consultant, but effectively he works for you, okay? He does work for you. Effectively his job is working for council. So that's not, as I said, not independent. So he's still, so a lot of times I don't get the agenda of what the biggest issue of those walls are. It's a retaining wall, it's simple. SUDs, 250s, 300s, I guess if they go another 4 metres down, they turn into a bigger crane. They turn into a bigger, you're talking shutters, but those, that block work is wet because the drainage that's not there behind a retaining wall that we can't put in. So my question is, if the retaining walls went in, let's say, next week, because obviously, I mean, everyone knows it's ready to go. I mean, you can start basically tomorrow. If they were in, would that dry out enough? Do you dig slots, do you dig drains, whatever? Firstly, to stop their water ingress. And secondly, as I see it, all the big cracks, I saw the photos last time, it was a big deal with cracks. This wide, I can put my hand into it. I mean, seriously, come on, what you do, you fill the hole, you impact it, and then you move on, okay? So council were a bit disingenuous with the way they put, firstly the tanking, the water ingress. Didn't mention that obviously everyone's got a 50 mil cavity there, so water's not going to ingress into a house because there's a 50 mil cavity that the frame doesn't touch. So I guess most people know that, but all you showed was a photo of ingress through a non-inhabitable wall. I mean, it's not fair, okay? It's disingenuous. But now I'd like you to tell me, or someone, that wall that's wet, dirt, the reason for it, we know. we know what it is. Now, I get Damien with, it's emotional, you know, it's really emotional, and who's at fault? I mean, it is clear, without trying to embarrass council, it is fairly clear that holding down bolts top and bottom, signed off. I looked through my ones, yeah, I saw it last night, all the sign-offs. It's signed off, so I mean, it is fairly obvious. I mean, everyone knows that it is. But we don't expect, I wouldn't think anyway, the council to put their hand up right now and say, yep, that's our fault, we'll write a check. I mean, it's not about that. As I see it, and I can be unemotional, because I do deal with this day to day, is you find the problem, well, we know there's a problem, but you find the extent of the problem, you find a solution, try to mitigate damages, then you sort out fixing it, and then your lawyer talks to my lawyer. And then that's basically how it works, unless you take over and my house is gone and you pay me what my section's worth. Blame game for me comes later. Most people here want their blame game played out now, for sure, because he's got dogs in the kennel, you know. But you get that, but you know, I don't get it entirely, because I mean, I get to drive back to Auckland tonight to my house in Auckland. I still pay a mortgage, but so that's, yeah.
So thank you for that. In terms of the issues that we're seeing on site, initially the primary issue was the slope that had been cut at the rear of the development site, but as we've engaged various experts, we're finding more issues are coming to the fore, and those are in the nature of what we've discussed: geotechnical engineering issues, structural engineering issues, building compliance issues. We've put up there 3 options that we're exploring and working on. No decision has been made at this point in time as to which, if any of those options are going to be progressed. So whilst there's been a response to the regulatory action, council taking the hands off, there has been no decision made at this point in time. We absolutely understand the impact that this is having on people, and we're trying to work as quickly as we possibly can to ensure that we've got all information so that then we can determine the way forward. We absolutely want to work with you to ensure that you can return to safe homes as quickly as possible.
Let me introduce myself just first for the media. I'm Dr. Lee Kano, only known to my neighbors as Lee, but I earned it. I'm retired. My specialty back in the States was intelligence. Doesn't mean I have any. It's just a claim to fame that we put on ourselves. But my profession was as a psychologist. And what's absent here tonight, entirely absent, is the understanding that this is not simply a house. Yes, it stays. No, it doesn't. Somebody gets paid. Somebody gets sued. These are people who are under stress, paramount stress, that is not dissimilar to the quakes in Christchurch. Denise and I had the thorough pleasure of being part of the city of Christchurch for 6 years, went through 51 5.0 or greater quakes in 24 months. And as bad as the PTSD was from that, this has already eclipsed it. So I think the council had darn well better consider more than liability for buildings, liability for attorneys, who's at fault for who did what. We have a signed list of inspections for every one of the homes that are occupied by a gentleman who bought a Bella Vista home directly across the street. Now, he thought they were pretty okay to live in. And I'll speak to a guy named Wes, who did the actual building, because Bella Vista didn't build the houses. Bella Vista subcontracted. And I will tell you that Denise, my much better half, who owned one of the largest real estate companies in the United States, who watched over tens of thousands of home constructions. We have never seen one better than Wes delivered. Now, no, we're not experts in construction, but when you don't see even microscopic cracks in a plate called your garage floor, after 2 years of having laid there, it's a little hard to understand anybody talking about undermining. But as a psychologist, retired, thank you, I'm talking to you about the people. Last week I was talking about my heart, but let's talk about what's left of my brain. Taking us out of our homes for a storm that didn't occur, for reasons that we wonder about. I don't notice that the Bella Vista homes that were built elsewhere are being inspected by the same council that approved those homes. There are just incongruities in the entire process. I don't want to place blame. I want solution for my neighbors. At 74, I want a place where I can live comfortably. And if it isn't in the home that Denise and I designed with Danny, then I think the council should get us out of it. Thank you.
Hi, it's Colin here. Just a number of questions. I'll first admit my house was one of those 4 that was tested. My house is one of those that failed. So that's my situation. So I've got a number of questions. Since we've got 2 out of 4 that have failed, will you be doing invasive testing on every house? Because I can't see how you can't. I think people would like to know.
So at this point in time, I don't know the answer to that question. We are working with the structural engineers to determine what is required over the next 3 weeks in terms of their assessment. As I said yesterday, they were looking at the concrete block walls, and further work is required there. And we need to work with them to determine what further assessments are required for them to be satisfied to be able to produce a complete report to us.
Okay, I understand the second part. There's new issues come up. I think it's a fair enough question. We've got 2 buildings out of 4 tested. That's 50%. So how can anybody ever move back into a Bella Vista house unless it's had the same standard of invasive testing to verify that those issues don't exist? So I just would have thought it would already have been decided that had to happen, but.
So Colin, just to respond, absolutely, we have talked that through. We've approached last week when we made the initial approaches with regard to asking for owner consent to undertake invasive testing. Some owner consent was withheld, so we need to engage with individual owners on that.
Okay, I think responding to. Sorry, I've forgotten the Chief Executive's name. Gary, is it?
Gary Poole.
I think we all do realise it's council money, and we're thinking $65,000 a week is going into the security and these other factors, and that would go a long way to building the wall at the back and fixing other problems. But we are, I think people that are dealing with their own issues, and it's a very, it's bankruptcy, it's financial ruin, it's a lot of issues for people. But they do appreciate it as their own money as ratepayers, and it's their friends and other people's money, and obviously it has to be wisely spent, but there is that kind of tension there that people have. I just thinking, I saw the three options, and I suppose I can't help but go back to, I suppose I thought the first one, I thought, oh good, and then you talked about putting a charge on property. So, it's coming back onto liability, because obviously option 1 and 2 are assuming that council has done what it should do and it's trying to help us, but it's not actually got any liability, versus option 3 would seem to be your one option saying, hey, actually we've got some responsibility here, some of our processes let us down. I'm not sure if I'm seeing that right. I didn't know if there'd be a fourth option, which is the remediation without the charge against resale value. I think should at least be a considered option. I would have thought would have been up there. I suppose my next question comes of, okay, so let's say we did option 1 or 2 happened. What will be on our limb in the future? Like what's our chance of ever selling or getting a decent price on these properties with the publicity, and what you will have to, out of all these reports you're having done, put and disclose in future limbs?
So the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act outlines what is statutorily required to be included in a LIM, and there are some discretionary items. If we were adopting options 1 or 2, then we would be working to get those homes code compliant and therefore meeting the requirements of the Building Act and the New Zealand Building Code. So that documentation would be included on the Land Information Memorandum.
Right, so you're saying once it got code of compliant, none of the other information would be on there, or would just be there, but you'd have a code of compliance after the date to show that it was fixed?
We would need to consider what information was included on the LIM. As I said, some is statutorily required to be included and some is discretionary. So if you're asking me whether we would include all of the expert reports, we would need to consider that. If the work is undertaken such that the buildings are code compliant, then that information would be imperative that that was included on the LIM.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Kirsty, can I just ask a question on behalf of myself and 2 other owners that aren't here currently at the moment, but we're one of the 3 that aren't, we were 50% through the build. Now in the first meeting we had, they talked about the assessments and how the homes weren't structurally stable to a compliant measure. Have those issues been resolved from a compliant point of view as to being able to proceed forward with commencing build should the issue be resolved?
Thank you, Andre. The question that you ask is in relation to the 3 dangerous buildings that were at framing stage, where structural defects were identified. Those structural defects have been remedied. They were remedied on the Friday, the 9th of March.
Is there currently, with your knowledge of and your geotech reports based on the land itself, is that hill unsafe?
So we're working through, as I said, processing the information that we've obtained from the radar, the ground penetrating radar, the testing of the soil that's been undertaken, and that's informing the report that's been prepared by Mike Trigger and peer reviewed with input from Marianne O'Halloran. So at this point in time, we're not able to say that report hasn't been finalised.
Caris and Coffees that undertook geotech engineering upon the development of that area itself?
So my understanding is that Mike Trigger met with Coffees earlier this week. Issues were raised at last week's meeting with regard to previous engineering advice that had been obtained, and at the request of one property owner, I attended a meeting on site with that owner and Craig Macdelow and the retaining specialist. So there have been further conversations, yes. Thank you, Deegan. So, as you know, there is a WorkSafe prohibition notice in place, which currently, so that was issued in October 2017, that remains in place at present, and that prohibits work within 2 metres of the slope. At last Tuesday's meeting, one of the property owners, supported by the retaining personnel, spoke to the fact that they'd obtained consent from WorkSafe to be able to undertake work on the retaining wall. We met with them last week following Tuesday night's meeting and talked through the issues that are occurring on the whole of the development site, and recognising that what we've got on the ground today is somewhat different from the original engineering reports that were undertaken, and that the site has changed. So there has been scouring and erosion and voids that have occurred. We're required to ensure that we've got all information as to what is occurring on the ground and under the ground, to fully inform us as to what immediate stabilisation works are required and what remediation works are required in the longer term. We're absolutely committed to working as quickly as we can. I absolutely get that this is frustrating for you, but that we have brought on board technical experts to work with us at pace. Our number one priority is to be able to get you back into safe homes as quickly as possible.
I break down, I'm sorry, I'm finding this whole process really hard. My husband and I have worked for years to get our house. You signed it off as a council as being fully compliant. One of those photos last week was taken 1 month before you put us in that house as a fully compliant house. So you are telling me and my husband and my beautiful fur family, by the way, that are stuck in kennels, and God knows, I've got one that's not eating, but that's beside the point. You've told us that that house was safe when we moved in, or else our bank would not have given us that money. Our bank are calling out to you to say what went wrong, what's happened, that you're not responding to our bank. You're not answering all of their questions. So my question to you is, as fully compliant, what are you going to do to support us to get through this point? Because we've paid everything. We're paying a mortgage. We've done nothing wrong. And you have taken us from our house that's fully compliant. What are you going to do about that?
Thank you, Jenny. Like you, we too have got lots of questions. We are asking ourselves, what has happened? How has this happened? And we are committed to finding the answers to those questions. Tonight, we don't have them, but that is part of what we're doing, is trying to get all relevant information so that we can understand. Firstly, we want to be able to get you back into homes that are safe. And secondly, we need to then understand what has happened, how that's happened, and what do we need to do here at Council.
quick question, probably in relevance to what I was talking about before. So the remedy structures that have been completed, can I ask who's signed them off? And if they have passed, we able to also be issued with that pass notice based on that inspection as per compliant with council's?
Sorry, I was just being handed another question, Andre. If you wouldn't mind, if you could, if you could repeat your question, I'm sorry, so that I can fully understand what you're asking.
So the work that was done upon these 3 homes that were basically 50%, now they have been done to a compliant standard. Can we know who has signed them off? And also, if we're able to, then if it has passed from a compliance standard to council, whether we can actually get that pass in writing as opposed to the fails that we currently have on Alpha 1 for these works that we were aware of October last year.
So the inspection records and information through the building consent and inspection process is information that is available to you, yes. And I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure that I got the second part of your question, which is...
So obviously with that remedial work that would have had to been inspected by a building inspector to be able to pass under the compliance standards that you have set, is there a pass or a notice that we can be issued to say that these things, currently in Alpha 1 for me, those things that were brought up, I knew as of October they had failed, will we get that pass?
So the emergency works that were undertaken on the afternoon of Friday the 9th of March have not been inspected by a member of the building inspection team. They were undertaken under the direction of a structural engineer by council at its cost with Classic Builders assisting us. So they have not yet been inspected by the building inspection team.
They may not be compliant at all with council's standards?
We would need to have an inspector inspect those properties, but what we have been told by way of a structural engineer inspection is that the emergency works that have been undertaken address the issues that were raised with those 3 dangerous buildings.
So if that's like based on those things that were fixed, and say my roof did come off, what would have happened then?
I guess that's a speculative question because that didn't happen, and what we were told was that the emergency works that were undertaken on the Friday afternoon did fully address the defects that had been identified earlier by the structural engineers.
So from a council point of view, there could still be issues that have not been looked at or assessed to the compliance standard that I was told would be done upon the first inspection.
So we are working our way through that. We've got, as you met Rose McLaughlin at the meeting last week, who is doing a property by property assessment of the compliance issues, and she is nearing the completion of her report. We said to you that we expected to have that available by the end of March, and she is working on schedule to that time frame. Question here from Janine. So Janine's question is, will the council help with moving costs if we have to move? And can we get a moving truck to the property to move? So with regard to the first question, we would need to consider that and provide advice to you on that. With regard, can we get a moving truck to the property? So we've been engaging with the geotechnical engineer on a request by request basis. So some properties, we're waiting for that geotechnical information. So it's been informed by the ground penetrating radar and the drilling that has been occurring on site. So we are not allowing vehicular access to properties except under the express consent of the geotechnical engineer. So again, that would be property by property. So I've got another question here. If processes have failed, then is this the same for every house built in Tauranga? I understand there are hundreds of new properties. So again, we don't know the answer to those questions. We are still gathering information. Like I said earlier in response to a question, we too are asking what and how this has happened. So we are still in that information gathering phase, but we want to understand the answer to those questions.
Actually, I don't need a
It's
mic.
for the people on the feed.
Are you not embarrassed about this? Are you not embarrassed? You sent in building.
So I haven't said, I said we were still information gathering. In terms of inspectors,
Few names. How many inspectors went in, and what were their qualifications? And why aren't they here? Why are they?
so
It doesn't take too much to get a
Well, we could
document
go
saying
to Mark
who
Bell.
signed.
can I please respond to the question about who?
That'd be nice.
So we are in the process of gathering that information. There were a number of inspectors that undertook inspections on those properties, and we are gathering detail as to what inspections have been undertaken by which inspectors over that development
And you're going
site.
to go back to all the houses that they've inspected to make sure they did their job properly? And what were their qualifications? Did you just drag them in off the streets, or?
And what about the ones that they're inspecting now?
Yeah.
We're looking
Are they
at,
still working here?
we are looking at certainly considering those questions and ensuring that we've got all relevant information so that we can determine the
I'm
way
sorry,
forward.
my name is Sylvia. Sorry, guys, I just can't hear her anymore. I'm Sylvia, I'm 301A Lake Boulevard, okay? Sorry, excuse my language because English is not my first language, okay? Until now, all those people asking you all those questions, I absolutely understand every single word. But when you're giving them answers, I can't understand none of what you're saying because you don't give them an answer exactly. You keep telling us we are not here to blame, we are here to standing together and they're looking forward. But we know where we're standing. That's why we need an answer. You just keep saying that we need to get more information. We need to get more information to find out what's going on. But it's been like I don't know how many months. It's a very long time. I don't know what you guys been doing. You guys just told us that you guys spending $65,000 last week. You can use that money to build a retaining wall. We can use that money to do something before, way before. If we start doing something way before, then it's not going to happen like this, what happened now. So please give us the answer what they're asking you. Are you guys trying to hide something from us? Then why you cannot give us the answer exactly? Sorry my English, but I hope that you guys understand what I'm trying to say.
I'll respond to that. To the lady who asked if we're embarrassed, yes, we are. Okay.
Thank you.
That would have been nice to hear.
doesn't fix the problem.
Okay, so yeah, we are. I mean, no, I'm not afraid of anything. Okay, what I'm here to do is try to work to get your problem solved. Okay, and that's what we're doing. And already, in terms of the way we've handled the situation with your accommodation and incidental expenses, etc. Okay, up until now, I think we have been more generous than any other council in this country that's been faced with an issue such as this. Okay. In terms of the second issue you raised about the kind of the confidence that people can have in the building system given what has happened, clearly we have turned our mind to that. Okay, but what we're doing at the moment is we're trying to focus our resources on solving your problem and then addressing issues that flow from the situation that we face here. So the questions that you're asking are in our mind, are top, but they're not top of our mind. Top of our mind is solving the issues that you've been confronted with. Then we will move to address some of the other questions that have legitimately been raised and have already been discussed by ourselves. Thank you.
Just before I ask my question, Gary, I actually heard you say we're wanting to solve your problem. I was hoping you would have said our problem, because by hearing that, it's feeling like the things that you're trying to do for us, you're saying that it's something that is only our problem, and so I'm having trouble with that.
You're correct. I mean, I should have said our problem, because we are trying to take an attitude of being in this together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gary, as homeowners here, we bought sections. We employed a builder to build that for us. They've let us down by the looks of this. Also, the people that are supposed to be looking after us as a council that we pay our rates for have failed us as well. So now, you standing up for us, or supposed to be putting us up, you're making us feel like you're doing us a favour. But what you're doing is actually looking after us because you should be looking after us. You have failed us as a council. We're still paying rates. I've just paid my rates. For what? I've got a home I can't live in. I'm still paying my bills. I'm still paying a mortgage.
Yeah, I'm hearing the feedback we're getting tonight about our proposal, okay, and we'll discuss what has been said at this meeting tonight. But I mean, what I've outlined is a situation that we are putting in place at the moment, and as I have said, we are prepared to have individual case-by-case discussions on a way forward. Okay, and we are open to having those discussions. And as I've said, it would be very helpful if you want to have a discussion like that, you tell us well before the 12th of April.
You talk to one, you talk to all. We're all in the same boat here. Doesn't matter. We're all in the same boat. We're all sinking, and nobody's coming to save us. Help us, help us, help us. Can you not see we need help? Nobody's helping.
I'll just quickly ask that. I just need to ask something, because I heard something tonight that there's possibly sinkholes in the land. When I hear that, whether it's true or not, my concern is if there is, I just feel like I need some reassurance that there would be some urgent attention, because I've heard that there's an easy fix to that. It's just grouted and obviously done a certain way. But I just want to know that if that's the case, there is some urgency in that, as opposed to needing to wait for all these other things to come in.
Thank you, Deegan. As I said, we've had ground penetrating radar out there. We've got drills, the soil that's been drilled, and that information is being fed back to the geotechnical engineer so that they can, and there are two now, there is Mike Trigger and a peer review, Marianne O'Halloran, and so that they can provide that information to us as soon as possible. You'll recall that we did emergency stormwater control works over the course of the 19th and 20th of February prior to the arrival of Cyclone Gita. There have been further stormwater control works undertaken on site last week, which involved replacement of coil, which involved connecting some of the downpipes to our stormwater reticulation system to try and alleviate the further stormwater over the course of the site and further erosion. So absolutely, we are not sitting on our hands waiting to receive these reports. We are working behind the scenes, and a lot of it you can't see. So we've got a dedicated team, the engineers, structural, geotechnical, the building compliance expert who's almost near completed her report. We've got the remediation works that are being undertaken at different points. So absolutely, we are committed to progressing as quickly as possible and identifying what can be undertaken in the immediate term, what can be undertaken in the short term, and what the longer term fix is. In terms of those options that are presented for you, I said that's a high level overview, and it's to share with you what we're working on. So we've got another team of people who've been working on that and progressing that.
Excuse me. Actual question this time. When you look at that slide, actually when you constructed that slide, I wonder if you asked yourself, gee, last week we had a loosely knit group of people who were in discomfort, and we kept saying to them, we're going to be looking at this as an individual case-by-case issue. What I think I can say for about half or better of the folks here tonight is you've solidified last week's problem. You're now staring at a fairly unified group of people who are not individually unhappy. We are collectively unhappy, which is exactly what you probably did not want to happen. So whoever designed the slide needs to go back and take another Psych 101 because it's a pretty poor slide.
I'm conscious of the time, and so...
Well, we got nowhere to be. We got all night.
Well, we haven't, okay? So I'm conscious of the time. At the start of this meeting, we said we would bring this meeting to a conclusion at 7:30. So we will have 2 more questions, and then we will end this meeting, okay? Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure if it came from you guys or from the floor. Someone just brought something that triggered in my mind. So we're in a situation where you, as you said, there's parts of your processes that you want to look into. If anything of history in the last 30, 40 years for organisations has come through where there's been problems, there's generally a principle applied now that you don't have the person who might be the cause of the problem investigating themselves. It doesn't tend to fit with transparency, even if they honestly do it. It doesn't help transparency. So can I suggest that you bring in some independence as part of your review that we know about and that we as owners also approve as truly independent? I think it would help a long way in the concerns that people have, you know, are you being honest? Is this happening? Are you trying to cover up? You know, who's out there who has the statutory authority or could be brought in to kind of be part of that?
Thank you. I mean, I can give you an absolute assurance that the people we bring in to find out what happened here will not be the people involved. They will be independent of those people, and they will be independent of this organisation. As was raised last week, there was some issues about Mike Trigger, and Kirsty has covered the fact that we now have a peer review of Mike Trigger's work, and we're transitioning to an engineer that has not been involved in the site before.
Jenny, what did you say about your bank? Our bank are very interested at this moment. And they've asked questions, but they're not responding?
So can I just provide clarification that those questions haven't been directed to me, and last week when we met with you, I did ask that any communications be channelled through me. I've provided you with my mobile phone, my email address. I've been taking calls at night, first thing in the morning over the course of the weekend. So Jenny and Damien, if your bank are asking questions of you that need to be directed to the council, I would like to receive those, please. Just in terms of the people that are joining us by video link, if we haven't got to your questions, then we will answer you directly by email tomorrow. We won't be able to get to those tonight, but we'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone that came tonight. I know it's been a night where the news that we've shared with you is not the news that you wanted to hear, but you know, that is our position as stated. We have made the offer to talk to you on a case-by-case basis, and if you feel that you wish to take up that offer, please let us know as soon as possible, because it will not be helpful if we have a kind of a crowd of people wanting to talk to us on the 12th of April, as you would understand. I'd like to thank you for how the meeting has gone this evening. I'm conscious that the situation that you find yourself in, the meeting this evening could have been a very unruly and disruptive meeting, and I'd like to thank you for your manners and courtesy towards us, given your circumstances. So thank you for your attendance and... Okay, our circumstances. Okay. I'd like to thank you for your attendance and good evening.